Hi, it's Johnny C McGinley from Stand Against Evil. You are following the nerds.
First and foremost, it's great to speak to you, and thanks very much for taking your time out of your day to do this.
Where are you calling from?
We're calling from Northern Ireland.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be there in about 48 hours. I'm going to be down in Kinsale in about 48 hours.
No way.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Can I just actually ask, a friend of mine says he thought he physically bumped into you a couple of years ago in Dublin. Would that...
Yeah, he did.
He remembers so well.
Yeah.
Because I'll be there. I'll be down in Kinsale for 3 or 4 days, and then I'll be in Dublin for about 8 days. And so it's a trip my brothers and I have done for almost 22 years. We used to do it with my father. It's a golfing trip.
Wow.
But it's more than just we golf and we lie about how great we used to be. We go all over Ireland, including up towards you. But then we kind of settled on the fact that we really just enjoyed Dublin. Because aside from Belfast and aside from Dublin, we couldn't get anything to eat. Everything was just lousy. And so this whole restaurant movement that happened in Dublin when the EU started to come around, where young people whose resumes didn't live up to what San Francisco, New York, Paris, Madrid, they had to find some place to get started and come up with some kind of fresh approach. And I think a lot of kids landed in Ireland, and they started coming up with this unbelievable food. Mm-hmm. And we're all foodies, and so we mostly just camp out in Dublin. But we started reading a book this year. My brother Jerry put a book this year on our reading list as it's germane to this trip, called Dead Wake by Eric Larson, about the sinking of the Lusitania and what happened from that first week of May until it reached 3 miles off of Kinsale. Mm-hmm. And it just made us go, yeah, we got to go back down to Old Head. And so I contacted a ship captain. I found him on the internet, Carol, this tremendous guy who runs Kinsale Shipping. And he's going to take us out. And obviously the Lusitania is a couple miles down at the bottom of the Atlantic, so we're not going to do that. But he's just going to regale us with wrecks and things that happened off of Kinsale, of which there's a lot.
My family were all sailors. My grandfather and my uncles, and the Lusitania was one of the ships that my grandfather would have always talked about.
I'm talking to Carol back and forth nonstop, who's this really amazing guy, and he said, he brought up Seamus Heaney, who's been a real hero of mine and somebody I sought out while he was alive for almost 20 years. I did not end up getting to meet him, but damn if I didn't try. And he asked me if I knew that his family, his widow and his daughter, had put together posthumously a book of 100 of their favorite poems of Seamus Heaney's. And I did not. I went on the internet, I saw the book. So I bought 4 copies, and I shipped one each off to my brothers. And so I told them, you have to pick 2 or 3 poems, and at dinner one night, after a couple of pints, you will be presenting your poems, and you will tell us why they resonate for you. And everybody just was so into it. I think everybody's pretty excited to share Heaney's work with the group.
We have to say, we've always found that there was something strangely Irish about a lot of the characters you play.
I've been going to Ireland for the better part of my life, and so none of that's by mistake.
I think that's maybe why we resonate so much with a lot of the characters that you play then.
Yeah.
Because it always seems to be like this sort of this guy that's almost kind of done with life and just wants to be left alone, but life keeps crashing in on top of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And plus you got to remember with Scrubs and now with Stan, there's this kind of sophisticated humor, certainly in Scrubs. And what I mean is there are parts of Scrubs that are very glib, very sardonic, very sarcastic. It's not, just your normal 7-syllable joke and then turn to the next line. And the same thing in Stan. And that Scrubs, and now with Stan, which is playing huge in Ireland and England, Scrubs always played bigger over there than it did here. Always. And I'm convinced it's because the writing was just a couple levels up. Mm-hmm. And my Irish friends always appreciated Dr. Cox because all my guys in Ireland are not afraid to take the piss out of each other. And Dr. Cox will just take the piss right out of you.
Yeah, I don't think I have any friends in Saxon. I'm sure you're the same. Who, if
You're
you
right,
ask
you
them,
don't have any
I don't know
friends.
if you ask them who your top 10 TV characters would be, Cox is always in there.
Yeah, he was a good character. He's such a disaster. Writers can write when characters have problems. They can write that character better and not make him redundant. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as you become redundant, then the writing becomes lazy, and the audience may or may not know it, but something's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's that the writers have lost their way with the conflicts that this character is dealing with. And with Cox, because he's so damaged, and writers can really dig their mitts into damages, Cox never became redundant. And we're doing the same thing with Stan. Stan is a deeply, deeply damaged character, and he suffered enormous loss. It's the first thing I told Dana Gould, who's the executive producer of the show, he came out to my house here and he brought me the script, and I had read it, and I told him, I said, the one thing that we have to do here, because you wrote it, Dana wrote it, the one thing we have to do here is we have to dig into Stan's loss, and how he's going to deal with it or not deal with it, and how that informs the way he's going to make it through this journey with these dopey witches, and he doesn't give a fuck about witches. He just lost his wife and his job at 27 years.
I think one of the greatest moments in the show, that to sum that up, it's where your character's daughter gets possessed and she tries to attack your character with an axe, and it immediately jump cuts from that to you duct taping her to a chair as though it's the most ordinary thing in the world.
I love that. I love it because he's not prepared for any of this. I mean, he's a sheriff. He's probably never taken his weapon out of his holster in the 27 years he was a sheriff. He's issued traffic tickets, and now in the first 3 minutes of the first episode, he's lost his job of 27 years, and his wife has been killed. And now this is our hero. That's just fascinating to me, and how men deal with loss, if they can deal with loss. And this goes back to my Irish heritage. Is, all the great Irish poets constantly we write about loss, and I wanted Stan to have to deal with loss. I didn't want him to get a pass on that character, on that what's going on there. And Dana took me up on it. And when we were just down at Comic-Con in San Diego, and now we'll be at Comic-Con in New York at the beginning of October, that's what really resonates for people. I mean, look, all the horror freaks love the witches and all that stuff, but people really love the fact that Stan's trying to make it through this thing the best he can. I
just love, that your character, he's so anti-heroic, and it's not, the reason I love it is because of Stan. The witches and everything else are, there's also a horror element, but it's your character that's so relatable and so great.
What makes me love Stan is that there's a tone that we've shepherded really assiduously, and the tone is, in horror comedy, in that spectrum, one end is like Scooby-Doo. Do you guys remember Scooby-Doo?
Of course.
I said we could forget.
Scooby-Doo, it's funny, but the monsters are declawed. And the other end of the spectrum would be The Exorcist, where it's scary as hell, but you can't drop a joke in The Exorcist. And somewhere in the middle there, between those two, is An American Werewolf in London and Stand Against Evil.
Yeah.
And trust me, the tone is all I care about in the piece. I mean, Stan's authenticity I care about, but the tone of the piece is what we hew to. And as one of the producers, and we've now cut all 8 episodes of season 3, that's where our focus is all the time.
We just watched the trailer as well for Benched, which you have coming out now in the next few weeks as well. While obviously it's a very, very different story and a very different character, we can see Cox in that character. We can see Stan in that character. How much of your characters, John, is you? How much do you put in there yourself?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's informed by I read an article that an interview that Malkovich did, 15 years ago now, and it's or maybe 20 years. It's right when De Niro was doing all that, becoming the character and all this stuff. And John wrote that he lets the characters become him. And the reason he does it is that his college of eccentricities and his foibles are far more interesting and accessible than anything he could glean from somebody that he hung out with for a week or two. And that resonated for me too. And so I invite all these characters to become me. And so, yeah, there's a disproportionate amount of John McGinley in all those things, because that's, through the work I've done, that's who I know the best. And so, sure, there's a large degree of me in all of them. And I couldn't be more comfortable with that. Look, every time you step in front of a lens, you're lying. I'm not Dr. Cox. I'm not Stan. I'm not the guy in Platoon. I'm not the guy in The Rock. I'm John McGinley.
Yeah.
And so if you can diminish the profundity of the lie that you're trying to tell in front of the lens, anything you can do helps. And so if you're bringing a lot of John McGinley with you every time somebody calls action and you're Stan, then the lie is not going to be as egregious, and the lens will suffer it as more truthful. And that's an ass-backwards way into saying that what's authentic in front of the lens is what resonates.
Do you find that sort of easier whenever it comes to playing, say, two different characters in the same run? Like, for example, back whenever you were filming for Wall Street, you were also immediately getting in a cab, barreling down New York to get to the rehearsals for talk radio.
It's a good question. What happens in circumstances like that, which is, I call the New York actor's dream, when you have two gigs at the same time, whether it's a movie and a play, or a TV show and a play, is that your instincts take over. And that's, again, that reduces the lie, because you're relying on instincts. You're probably sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night, and you're on the set with Oliver for 14 hours, and then you're right to the public, and you're doing talk radio with Eric Bogosian, which was a massive hit play in New York. You stop acting and you start behaving. And it's not, it's really kind of a delicious flow state that you're invited to get into. You got to just start to flow artistically. And that's lovely. They don't come along. That sense of grace when someone calls action doesn't come along very often.
You're actually in what is probably my favorite action movie, and certainly one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Point Break.
Oh, yeah.
And your character in it is such a loathsome character, but so good.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that he's running a department. Was it Ben Harp? I know Harp is running the department, and he doesn't suffer fools. Uh-huh. And Keanu's character at the beginning is a fool, and so is Gary's. And so those aren't the kind of employees that really we're going to roll the welcome mat out for. And so there's that lovely, almost 3-minute walk and talk right when Steadicams were happening, where we got to establish all the who, what, where, when, how in that one incredibly fluid walk and talk at the very beginning of the movie.
I take the skin off chicken.
And it's just unbelievable. Yeah, take the skin off chicken. And we shot it about 36 times. I think Catherine kept, I think the one in the movie is 3 or 4. And that was, the most interesting thing to me about Point Break is that it's a study of testosterone and it's directed by a woman. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it has this kind of just off edge to it. That Catherine directed it made it twice as interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And then she goes on to direct The Hurt Locker, so there was nothing unusual about her understanding of men. But at the time, I thought that just gave it this really interesting twist. Plus, Patrick was so amazing in it, and Keanu's great. And I love that movie. On
paper, it is just like an out-and-out action movie, but there's something really almost sort of beautiful and spiritual about it as well. It's so much more than
Catherine.
just...
That's all, and that's Catherine. The way she attached a lot of those qualities to Patrick's character. And Patrick was a really special human being. And I thought Keanu, when Keanu's cast properly, he's really effective. I mean, now he's become this martial artist guy, but back when he was kind of a naive fish out of water and he had to find his way, whether it's The Matrix or Point Break, he's really terrific.
Yeah. Because remember, at the time he was
he's also the nicest guy on the planet.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy, but at the time he was best known for Bill and Ted, and then he just came out, it was like, this guy's doing an action movie, and again, as I say, it just became one of the greatest action movies imaginable.
Yeah, I thought that handheld running chase, that foot chase with the handheld camera, where he throws the dog, and I just thought that was groundbreaking. And some of the surfing footage was